The whole system is in a lot of trouble. He's had to send the second aircraft carrier into the Red Sea now, which is not a demonstration of strength. It's an admission of weakness. Israel itself is its own best, biggest enemy. And I think that the nation is failing. It's failing its people, and it's at war with all of its neighbors. And Israel itself is teetering closer and closer to a civil war. This is him having aces up his sleeve that he doesn't wish to reveal, and that the cards he's putting down on the table are not the cards that he intends to play.
Hello and welcome to Soar Financially, a channel where we discuss the macro to understand the micro. My name is Kai Hoffman. I'm the JR Mining guy over on X, and of course, your host of this channel. And I'm looking forward to welcoming back, or not back, but on for the first time, Alex Krainer. He's the founder of Krainer Analytics and also the creator of the ICE system trend following system here, and I'm really looking forward to catching up with him about geopolitics and gold. Primarily we're going to talk geopolitics, but I do want to ask him about the flows of gold recently, so we'll save that towards the end of the conversation because it has been quite interesting what's been happening on the Comex, and I'm curious what his thoughts are on that topic in general. We'll talk oil. There's so much going on right now. Again, over the weekend, talk about American exceptionalism waning, nuclear arms race been popping up this morning again, so lots and lots to cover here. We'll dive right in a second, but before I switch over to my guest, please support our channel. It's tremendously appreciated and it's free. Just hit that like and subscribe button and we do appreciate it. So thank you so much for that. Now, without much further ado, Alex, it's great to welcome you on the program. Welcome to Soar Financially.
Thank you for having me, Kai. Good to join you, and warm greetings from Monaco to everyone listening.
I'm sure it's warmer than here, though, in Germany. What's the temperature in Monaco right now, Alex?
Microsoft says 13 degrees.
Oh, wait. We're at 16 in Frankfurt, so we got you beat. So
you got us beat, or Microsoft's lying. I don't know.
I don't know. We'll find out eventually. But no, Alex, great to have you on. As I said, we've got lots to talk about, very little time. Let's dive right in, and maybe a bit of an opening question to get this conversation started, Alex. Is like, what is the U.S.'s current agenda on a global geopolitical scale here? What are they trying to achieve? What's their position?
Well, that's how much time do we have?
45 minutes. Let's see if we can cover it.
That's a very, very big question. Opinions differ, and we don't know who's right at this point. The way Donald Trump campaigned and the early statements from out of his administration suggested that they are embarking on a complete overhaul of the global political and security architecture. And I think a really important statement was that delivered by State Secretary Marco Rubio in January during his confirmation hearings, in which he said that the post-World War II global order is more than obsolete, and that it is currently being used as a weapon against the United States. So, Marco Rubio didn't come up with that statement himself. This is pretty much, at least overtly, the policy position of the Trump administration. And so their early steps, I think, were extremely encouraging. Namely, the Donald Trump forcing Benjamin Netanyahu to a ceasefire, and him picking up the phone and speaking with Vladimir Putin in Russia. I still think that Trump deserves every credit for these two initiatives. And apparently, well, not apparently, he also said that he was speaking with Xi Jinping. So that put some credibility behind the statement by Marco Rubio. And then we also saw it confirmed in the negative way by the way He's dealt with Emmanuel Macron, Keir Starmer, Kaja Kallas, Ursula von der Leyen, and Volodymyr Zelensky. Oh, yeah, and the Polish president, Andrzej Duda, prime minister. Because he's given them all sort of a short treatment. Kaja Kallas has had her appointment with Marco Rubio canceled at the last moment when she was already in Washington, D.C. to meet with him. Ursula von der Leyen was trying to reach Donald Trump numerous times by phone. He simply didn't take her calls. And so all that was, I would say, to my mind, very encouraging. And then things took a sharp turn for the worse when he ordered last weekend the bombardment of Yemen, and when he kind of gave the green light to Benjamin Netanyahu to resume bombardments of Gaza. So that has been a serious discouragement and a disappointment. But now what we see is the observers and analysts who have, certain knowledge about foreign policy, about politics in the United States, about the Trump administration, its supporters, donors, and so forth. Some of whom are saying now, yeah, told you so. This was all a big deception, and they were always going to do exactly what it was going to be a continuity of Trump, of the Biden administration, only in a different cellophane wrapping. And then other people are saying, no, he's doing much, much bigger things, and because of the domestic political considerations, he has to still maintain this position of being unconditionally supportive of Israel. He cannot turn that part of his political base, which is Jewish Zionists and Christian evangelicals, against himself at this point. I don't know who's right about this, but I have the feeling that the people who are saying that the people who are saying that Trump has to act this way for domestic political considerations, that they're closer to the truth. I wasn't sure until we got the rumors about him saying that, oh yeah, maybe it would be a good idea for the United States to become an associate member of the British Commonwealth, to become again part of the British Empire, in other words. So the fact that we are at that point tells me that there's no way that he's sincere about this. This is him having aces up his sleeve that he doesn't wish to reveal, and that the cards he's putting down on the table are not the cards that he intends to play. So we're looking at a general overhaul of the global order, and I think that what we're going to get is something decided between the United States, China, and Russia. And today, the talks between Russian delegation and American delegation in Riyadh started. They're going to go on for, I think, 2 days, maybe 3 days. And then we're going to know a little bit more, but I don't think that they're going to tell us everything. And then I think this week, King Charles is visiting Donald Trump. Donald Trump suddenly really likes King Charles, Jimmy Savile's former friend, and we'll find out what that is too. But it's going to be interesting. And I think that still, because they won't be able to tell us everything black on white, this is how it's going to be, I think that still we're going to get a lot of disagreement among observers and analysts.
It is really difficult to cut through the noise to find the true signal, I have to admit. Like you just said, the British Commonwealth comment over the weekend is more noise than signal, I have to. Because you were talking about losing the domestic base. If he were to be serious about the US joining the British Commonwealth again, he would lose quite a bit of domestic base, I would assume, right?
Yes, and so as I mentioned, a strong part of his support are Zionist Jews and Christian evangelicals. And I have been, for a long time, I've been vaguely aware of what this entails. But over this weekend, I kind of thought, okay, I want to understand this a little bit better. So I did a little bit of research. And it's quite staggering that there's a massive amount of importance that is built into this moment of history, because what Christian evangelicals, Christian Zionists believe about the current moment in time is that everything that's going on in the Middle East now is a prelude to the second coming of Christ, and that the reestablishment of the state of Israel was a milestone on the road to this, and that there's going to be an Armageddon, and that Israel will be attacked by united forces directed by Antichrist. This is heavy stuff. And so I think that appearing to not be supportive of Israel in the United States could be a lot worse than just, displeasing a segment of your political base. It could be so bad that somebody could say, oh, Trump is the Antichrist, or he's the servant of the Antichrist. Something so bad that it would immediately turn that whole very irrational but very passionate part of your political base completely against you, turn them into your complete enemies. And so I think that it's a very hot potato for Trump to manage. And so I understand that he has to manage it with extreme caution. And we'll see how it goes. But it's, if you look into that problem matter carefully, you realize that he can play around with this. He cannot even let this part of his political base even suspect that he's not unconditionally supportive of Israel.
Yeah, no, as you said, it's heavy stuff. I'm processing as we speak here. It's not an easy topic, because I'm really coming from really pragmatic. Like, what is the motivation in general? What's Israel's motivation, and what is Israel's role in the Middle East right now, given what is happening? Why did Trump choose to attack Yemen? What kind of signal is that sending to the region here, Alex?
I don't know. Trump's attack on Yemen is so wrong, and the more I look at it, so incredibly dumb, that I don't know how to explain it exactly. He's had to send the second aircraft carrier into the Red Sea now, which is not a demonstration of strength. It's an admission of weakness, because obviously your one airstrike carrier group was not enough. And obviously it didn't intimidate the Houthis. They continued attacking. They're still continuing to attack both the US Navy forces and Israel at the same time. So they're not deterred. Let's remember that in December of 2023, so what is that? 15, 16 months ago, the Biden administration launched the Operation Prosperity Guardian, and that was joined by the UK, by France, by Italy, and they all went there, and they were all going to defeat Ansar Allah in Yemen, and they all failed. And the French and the Italians just simply withdrew their ship because they were not prepared for they're used to striking goat herders with expensive drones and missiles, but if somebody has the capability to strike back, they just run away. And this is what the Harry Truman carrier strike group has had to do. They moved, I think, 1,300 kilometers away from Yemen. And so now Trump has had to send the second aircraft carrier strike group. We know since the early 1990s that the Pentagon analysts themselves published, I think, two very important reports about the US hegemony in the Middle East. And the gist of those two reports are that basically the United States has two levers of power to preserve their hegemony in the region. One is their allies. So we're talking about Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Egypt, Israel, importantly, the Arab Gulf states. Not exactly very, very powerful states, but Israel, the rabid attack dog could always be counted on, and to a lesser extent, maybe Egypt. But the second lever of power was power projection. So not actual power, but just bringing these carrier strike groups into, into the vicinity of some uppity nation that is, brazen enough to challenge the dictate of the empire, and then intimidating them into submission, but not actually waging war. For that, they had, the Saudis, the Israelis, and so forth. And that was 1991 when these reports were published. Now we are more than 30 years later. Powers like Iran and Yemen have hypersonic missiles that can strike U.S. forces with precisions. Not only their naval forces, but also their military bases in the region, of which I think they have about 60 military bases in the Middle East. And so that's a very grave threat to which they don't have an answer. For example, a carrier strike group, like a destroyer in the carrier strike group, carries something like 96 surface-to-air missiles to defend against aerial missiles and drones. Once these 96 missiles are fired off, then the ship has to return to port to rearm. They don't have other ways of rearming. So they go out there, they get attacked by these cheap drones against which they have to fire off this very limited supply of extremely expensive weapons. And then when they fire them off, then they have to return to base. So it's a completely unsustainable, it served power projections well between World War II and today. It no longer does. So the fact that Trump has played this card tells me that either he was ill-advised or I don't know what's up with him. I thought that maybe it was even an elaborate scheme to disentangle the United States from the region entirely, but I don't see that I think this is simply a blunder. I don't know how else to explain it. It's exposed their vulnerability. They will not be able to achieve the objectives that they stated. It's kind of cornering them into escalating against Iran. If they do that, they will be burnt like they've never been burnt before. And so I'm not. I think that they're just blundering with this.
Yeah, you just touched on that. It was my follow-up question here. It's like playing with fire, but is he pulling Iran into this conflict now? Is he forcing Iran to do something that would give the U.S. reason to retaliate, perhaps? Poke the bear long enough until it starts to bite or go after you, right? Is that a risk? And what could be the potential fallout of Iran joining? Because I'm thinking of, like, way further ahead, like China, Russia entering that situation, because now their national interests, especially China's, are being threatened.
Well, yeah, you see, the Western policy with respect to war has always been to get the other side to strike first, because then you can say they're the aggressor, the brutal attack, blah blah blah. You create this whole narrative in your public that then justifies you going to war against them and allocating all these massive financial and military resources into a brand new shiny war. So yeah, they will continue to provoke Iran. Now, what is not clear to me is Trump doing this with the view of actually attacking Iran, or is he doing it with the view of gaining a very or what he imagines to be a very favorable negotiating position? I think he has a.
Yeah, can I throw in there just real quick? Trump was on the phone with Putin last week, and they discussed Iran, that they can't have Iran be in a position to attack Israel. They both agreed on that, which was an interesting statement. I don't think it caught the media's attention in general. So I'm curious what your thoughts are there, because Russia and the U.S. Aligning on that policy, like, how does that fit in with what you've just been saying? And apologies for interrupting you there.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, and I think that Iranians themselves understand that they probably don't have to attack Israel, because Israel itself is its own biggest enemy, and I think that the nation is failing. It's failing its people, and it's at war with all of its neighbors, and it's Israel itself is teetering closer and closer to a civil war. Benjamin Netanyahu just ordered the IDF back to war in Gaza, and we see that IDF troops are not happy about this, and some of them are, we have reports of some of them simply refusing to take their orders. So there's, if you're in the military and you're refusing your orders, then that means that the discontent is at the boiling point. That's a very big decision for a soldier to make, because it has extremely heavy consequences potentially. They never defeated Hezbollah. They never defeated Hamas. If anything, Hamas today is stronger than they were in October 2023. And now they have their greatest enemy at their doorstep, which is Turkey. So, Turkey took over Syria essentially through HTS as their proxy, but they're controlled by the Turkish military and intelligence apparatus. And now Syria was a buffer between Turkey and Israel. There's no buffer anymore. And so now, the Israelis themselves promoted Turkey to be their number one enemy. Iran is no longer looming quite so big as Turkey is. Israel's economy is in a very poor shape. The discontent among the people is rising. The demonstrations against Netanyahu's government are gaining momentum. And the problem is that nobody really knows what happens if Netanyahu himself falls. And Netanyahu is crafting his government policies not necessarily around what's best for Israel, but what's best for him. And what he needs is continuing war. If the war fighting stops, there's every chance that he will end up in prison. And this is what he's trying to avoid. So the whole country is now hostage to Benjamin Netanyahu. And so it doesn't look good, which may, from the point of view of Iran, the Iranians, it's better that way, because if you attack them, you kind of bring the people together. People close ranks behind their leaders if they're attacked, even if they hate them otherwise, because they perceive it an external threat, and they are now willing to go fight in wars. If you don't attack them, you leave them to their own devices, then internal squabbles begin, which tear apart the fabric of the society from the inside. So in this sense, the fact that Trump and Vladimir Putin agreed that Iran should not be allowed to attack Israel makes all the sense in the world. And then let's not forget that Israel does have, between 200 and 400 nuclear devices, nuclear missiles, and that their leadership is fanatical enough that nobody should feel relaxed about this. That if they perceive that they're going down, that the Israel project is failing, they might decide to fire off all these missiles at whatever targets they choose. And, that's kind of like Kirill Budanov in Ukraine saying, well, if we lose, we blow up all the nuclear power plants. And so if we go down, everybody goes down with us.
That's grim. I don't even want to go there. No, it's interesting insights there, Alex. And one question popped into my head is like, what's Iran's motivation? And from my position, from what I'm seeing, Iran is fairly mute. They're only reacting. I don't see them doing anything right now. They almost seem neutral, and I hate to say that. It's just an observation from my end. I might be wrong on that, but it's not like they're starting and instigating. Neither in Syria. We could talk about maybe supporting Hamas and supporting Hezbollah, supporting maybe the Houthis here. Like, I'm curious, is that more passive aggressive warfare? Like, there's no overt aggressiveness. Is that correct? I'm trying to understand the motivation. Just destabilizing, but it reminds me a bit of the Dark Knight and the Joker. Some people just want to see the world burn, so I'm trying to figure out what a motivation here is.
Well, I think that Iran's driving motivation is their own national security and their ability to develop their economy, to bring increased standards of living to the nation. So the regime wants to preserve itself, and it has to deliver for its people, because the Iranian people are not so uniformly happy with their government. Israel is clearly a grave threat to Iran. So that's the inverse of what we're always told by the mainstream media, because Israel is the element of destabilization for the whole region. And so, we have to kind of take a step back and understand Israel a bit in more realistic term, because I grew up I was always told that Israel was, the aspiration of the Jewish people, that it's a homeland for them where they can be safe and secure, and it's the end of the pogroms and Holocaust that they suffered through history and so on. But actually, that's all the cover story. That's the narrative. The reality is that Israel, from its conceptual beginnings at the end of the 19th century, has always been an imperial project. So it was created there in order for the British Empire to maintain their hegemony in the region, which they understood is not only resource rich, but also extremely important to the global trade. It always has been. It's where the East and West come together. And it's always, even from the Roman times, this area has been, the whole Eastern Mediterranean has been extremely important in economic terms. And it's always been very, very wealthy for that reason, because it was the trade hub of the whole world. And so to maintain their hegemony over the region and control the resources of the Middle East, Israel was created. And as the alumni of Alfred Milner's roundtable group in London said, the plan was to seed the region with a particularly patriotic stock. And then, that was Alfred Milner and his roundtable group, which is, pretty much the main think tank of the British Empire. And then we had in 1917 the Balfour Declaration, which was issued by British Foreign Minister Arthur Balfour to Lord Walter Rothschild. And Lord Walter Rothschild's son was Nathan Rothschild, who was best friends with Arthur Balfour and who hung out with him at the Foreign Office practically all the time. They were close associates. And so the Rothschilds are a banking family. It is always the bankers, the money-lending oligarchies, who are keen on maintaining hegemony over resource-rich regions, because then those resources can become collateral of their own banking systems, and then their clients, the companies that bank with them, can get the loans to go and develop those resources. And thereby, as these resources are turned into financial flows, they ensure that those flows go towards their banking institutions in the West. This is how the empires function. So, long story, but the narrative that this is a homeland for the long-suffering Jewish people is the publicly palatable, acceptable narrative over the whole enterprise, whereas the reality is that it's an imperial project. And so from Iran's point of view, this is always a threat, because it was created there as a beachhead to prevent the Iran from rising as a regional power, gaining strength economically, militarily, politically. And so this is why Iran is so vitally interested in neutralizing Israel, or at the very least forcing it to accept the two-state solution, and to forcing them to allow the creation of the Palestinian state right next door to Israel, or better yet, to force Israel to become a one state of Jews, Christians, and Muslims. And that way you dilute this aspect of Israel, which is that it's a beachhead for the Western Empire. First, the British Empire, but then the whole agenda got simply transferred to a new headquarters in Washington, D.C., or Wall Street, however you wish to define it. And the same strategy has been in place ever since.
Maybe I'm too narrow-minded. I have to admit, this is like looking at the stars and trying to understand the universe a little bit to me. What's Israel's motivation of expanding even further out? As you said, using it as a beachhead. So if you're a beachhead, you have the mission to expand and land and really spread out. Is it really just war over resources? Because what you said at the beginning, also there's an underlying religious war as well.
Well, you have to keep the people motivated, and so you can't. Generally, you cannot motivate people by monetary rewards. It dissipates and it causes internal strife. There has to be, in all these, let's call it fanatical or revolutionary or Messianic movements, you have to have a unifying ideology. And so, among the Zionist Jews, there's definitely a messianic agenda at play, and they are completely at odds with a whole huge segment of Orthodox Jews who say, no, Israel is completely antithetical to our religion. We are dead against this. God did promise us return to the promised land, but it has to be given to us by God, not created by man. So there's a deep fracture among the Jewish people themselves, and the ones who are in power now in Israel are the Zionist fanatics, the zealots of that believe that it's their mission to lead the world to the end times, and so they have to create greater Israel. And then there's a whole eschatological dimension to all this, which is being promoted by some very prominent rabbis in Israel, which is basically that this point in history amounts to redemption of Israel. Now, what that entails is that Israel has to antagonize all its neighbors and behave in the worst possible way in order to draw to themselves the wrath of their neighbors, and then suffer a punishment. And that only after that after the Jews have cleansed themselves through this punishment, then the Messiah comes. As far as they're concerned, the Messiah hasn't come yet, and he won't come before Israel's redemption. And redemption will only come from punishment, which they have to invite onto themselves. So slaughtering children, women, old people, destroying olive groves, all of this desecration, all of this barbarity is necessary to cause everyone to hate Israel. And is this why they're doing it? I don't know. That's an interpretation, and I learned about this interpretation from a man who is a devout Muslim who studies end-time eschatologies of Jews, Christians, and Muslims, and this is what he explained to me. And he's not wrong in the sense that there really are prominent rabbis in Israel who are actually promoting this view. So it's not possible to explain this entirely in rational terms. Quest for resources, quest for security, defeating our enemies. There's also a very deeply irrational dimension to it, based in faith, based in religion.
Maybe just to summarize it before we move on, it's just like how do you see this playing out? Let's assume for over the next 12 months. What is your prediction? How will this scenario play out in Israel and in the region?
I think that Israel will wither. I believe that it will wither because it no longer provides any kind of security to the people of Israel. It makes life there insecure, difficult. It makes the future very uncertain. Those who can are leaving. The IDF is exhausted. Israel's security completely depends on the backing of foreign powers, primarily the United States, but then NATO and the UK, which are themselves very weak. And I think that life in Israel is going to be turning worse and worse for the people living there. And I think that those who can will leave. And we're going to see exodus of Jews back towards, the United States, Canada, Western Europe, Russia, maybe Ukraine. And the whole enterprise, I think, is going to just deflate completely. And then political pressures will probably drive a creation of one state where Jews and Christians and Muslims will live with equal rights. Now, for people, it's difficult for people to imagine this happening because, the passions are running so hot. But, in history, these kinds of things have happened. You had, for example, I'm from Croatia. During World War II, you had horrible atrocities inflicted by Croatians against the Serbs, and to a lesser extent, vice versa as well. Nevertheless, when new political leadership took over in 1945, then the ideology of unity and brotherhood was promoted, and people came to live together again. And for until the early 90s, everything was going reasonably well. Actually, it was going really well. And so this is entirely possible. You're always going to have some haters on the margin who will be chiefly interested in vengeance. But I think that the majority of people will just be thankful that the worst is behind them, and they will want to get on with their lives.
No, I agree. I'm curious how this plays out, and I'm all for multipolar, or what do you call it, multicultural societies, because we live in the world of the internet where everybody has access to all the information. Personally, and that's a personal statement, like maybe I'm a bit narrow-minded, naive to believe that it's possible, but with all the information at hand, why do we have to fight these wars? Like, it's something I personally struggle with because I don't understand religious wars. Everybody has their own beliefs, and I'm really almost like libertarian saying that. It's like, you do you, but like it's interesting with all the information we have. It's just a personal statement because I've thought about that personally a lot. Like, why does this still happen in 2025, for example? And that's where I struggle.
There's a great deal of deception going on with that. When the war erupted in former Yugoslavia, it was easy for anybody in the West to believe what was being published in the mainstream media, that these are centuries-old hatreds between Serbs and Croats and Muslims, and Croatians are Catholics and Serbs are Orthodox, and so they hate each other, and these hatreds just erupt uncontrollably. Complete and total nonsense. This is almost exactly like, that metaphor about putting 100 red ants and 100 black ants into a glass jar.
No.
Yeah, well, this has been done, as an experiment. They put 100 black ants and 100 red ants into a jar. They close the jar, and now they're forced to be there, live together. What happens? Nothing happens at all. But if you shake up the jar violently, then the ants start killing each other because they're alarmed. Something is terribly wrong. They don't understand, but they see the other. Oh, it must be them. So the adrenaline rushes, and the killing begins. And so, the people of the former Yugoslavia have been able to live in peace side by side for decades. In fact, most of the time throughout our history. But every so often, for reasons of global geopolitics dictated by London or other imperial colonial centers, these people would be pitted against each other to trigger a war, to destabilize the region, to maybe destabilize the like World War I. The idea was to destroy Germany, and the agenda was to use Serbians to antagonize the Austrian Empire, because then the Austrian Empire would lash back, and then the Russians would be forced to come to the aid of the Serbs, and the Germans would be forced to come to the aid of Austria. And that's what they've done. And that's exactly how. And then they would say, like, oh, these Serbs, like the, centuries old hatred, whatever. It's always like that. And then we also see that in the Middle East, Jews and Christians and Muslims are perfectly capable of living together in peace as brotherly communities. And you can see that in the Middle East. If you travel around the Middle East, you'll see a church, and then half a block away a mosque, and these people know each other personally. They're friends. They harbor no hatred to each other. Second largest Jewish community in the Middle East is in Iran, and they've lived there for 2,000 years. And the fact that they still exist should tell you something. Yeah. There's no hatred towards them. They haven't been exterminated, as we're trying to, everybody's saying, like, oh, the Iranians, they want to exterminate the Jews, they hate the Jews. Why do they hate the Jews? Because they're Muslims. It's all complete nonsense. It's all deception to make us acquiesce to these forever wars and always say, like, oh gosh, these people are so incredibly irrational and backwards. They just lash out and kill each other. No, ultimately, it's all about resources and the banking interests that are driving this. And then they also own the media that are spinning these nonsense stories for us to then go like, oh, the centuries-old hatreds. These people just, they need us there to mediate and intervene to hold them from lashing at each other and slitting each other's throats. It's an almost exact inversion of the truth.
Yeah. Alex, I need to invite you back for a second part two, because we even touched on Europe and let's call it the new world order and the multipolar world. But I promised to my audience that we'll talk gold real quick. I almost feel terrible and stupid asking about gold now, because it doesn't fit the narrative that what we've discussed at all. But we need to talk about the Comex flows real quick, because I know you got some insights there, and you're tracking that a little bit. Maybe there is even a bit of a bridge. Like one comment I've read below one of our YouTube videos was, maybe Europe is preparing for war. That's why the gold is flowing towards the US again. And curious what your take on this is for the last 5 minutes before we wrap this up here, Alex.
Well, Europe is preparing for war. There's no doubt about that. They're doing it. They're on that road. Gold, I think that, a lot of things, there's a confluence of a lot of things. And apparently, people are losing confidence in the markets, in the system. The rumors that there's a bail-in being prepared in Europe are gaining momentum. That they will simply confiscate people's savings in Europe, like they did in Cyprus after what was it, 2008, 2009. And so, there's a lot of people who are demanding return of their gold and demanding delivery. And so Chicago Mercantile Exchange, apparently the pace of stands for delivery. So, when you trade futures, if you have a long position in gold, you can roll it over. You can liquidate it by selling the contracts, or you can roll it over, say, from, I don't know, a March contract to the June contract or so forth. Or you can stand for delivery, meaning you don't sell the contract, you don't roll it over to the next delivery month, you demand delivery of the physical gold. So if you have one contract, that will be 100 ounces. So you say, I want my 100 ounces in gold, please. And so this year compared to last year, apparently the demand for delivery has increased by a factor of 4. So the CME is having to, in spite of the fact that they're trying to do everything they can to discourage people for actually demanding delivery, they're having to deliver an awful lot of gold, which is why they had to demand a return of their gold. The American gold dealers had to demand return of their gold from London. And apparently London doesn't have it either, because it went from an affair of 2 or 3 or 4 days to something between 6 and 8 weeks. I think that the whole system is in a lot of trouble. And then, one thing that I have observed as a commodities trader over the last 25 years is that the narrative always follows the price. Because at any given point in time, you could contrive a bearish narrative about the market, or you can contrive a bullish narrative. There's always elements for either. But when people see prices of something go up and up and up and up and up, then they say, oh, I guess it's a bullish cycle, and so all these elements must be valid and true. So then that tends to reinforce the bullish narratives, and they follow along with the price. And we don't know where that goes. We just made new all-time highs last week, above $3,000 an ounce. As the narrative gains momentum, there will be more and more and more people who are going to say, I need to have a little bit of this. You have a $200 trillion shadow banking system that apparently has less than 1% of their assets allocated to gold. Shadow banking system is the pension funds, the hedge funds, the money that's already the liquid investable assets. So that's, the banking system can create credit. They can write money into existence. The shadow banking system is just investing existing pool of assets. So if just a small fraction of these pension fund managers, hedge fund managers, endowments, if they decide, my gosh, gold's moving, we need to be in gold, then the price could skyrocket much, much higher than where it is today. And, that's not going to happen overnight. Prices always fluctuate a bit up, a bit down. But let's remember that last time we had inflation, like real inflation, was in 1970s. And between 1971 and 1980, the price of gold went up 24-fold, not 24%, 24-fold, from $35 an ounce to over $800 an ounce. And I think that the price of silver, if I remember correctly, went up about 50-fold. So I think that there's a good chance that we are in the early stages of this kind of a development. And then these narratives about shortage of gold and this and that, they're going to follow the price, the movement of prices. The last thing I'm going to mention is that there's also a cultural element to them, because now for decades we're being told that gold is a barbarous relic, that it doesn't serve any purpose, that it's completely irrelevant. And people have genuinely lost interest in gold. Just, I think, 2 or 3 years ago, I watched a YouTube video by Mark Dice. He's one of these really good YouTubers who, in a town in Southern California, was offering people 1 ounce gold coins in exchange for their junk, a baseball hat, a used water bottle, an opened water bottle, whatever they had on them. So basically worthless stuff. He was saying, here's this gold coin. I think that it was worth about $2,300 at the time. And he would tell them, this is worth $2,300 worth of gold. I'll give it to you in exchange for your baseball hat. And he stood right across the street from a gold dealership. And he said, you can just walk right over there and ask them to tell you what this is worth, and they'll tell you. And everybody was like, no, dude, thank you very much. Not interested. I think 18 out of 18 passersby that he interviewed. So that tells you that the idea of gold as a store of value has been culturally eradicated. But, when the price at the gas pump, grocery store, your rent, everything is going up, and you see gold go from, what was it, $1,000 a few years ago to $3,000 today, well, then people start paying attention. They start gaining interest. And then, the whole cultural lack of interest reverses into intense interest. And we've seen when that happens, what happens. Example being Bitcoin. Not long ago, nobody even knew Bitcoin existed. And it represents nothing at all, right? It's a cryptocurrency based on what is it called? The distributed ledger.
Ledgers, yeah. I'd say hopes and dreams, but I guess wait for it in the comments.
But whichever. As with anything, it depends on people believing something, people having faith in some asset. And so, in my company, where I worked in 2013, we launched a Bitcoin fund. And at the time, I promise you, many people called us and said, what the hell? Because we were like a legitimate hedge fund company. They were like, what the hell are you doing? You're going to ruin your reputation. What is this Bitcoin nonsense? Bitcoin was trading at around $300, $400, $500 a piece. And nobody was interested. Nobody. They thought we were about bonkers for even doing this, that we were really shredding our credibility. And then in 2017, 2018, Bitcoin does one of these hockey stick run-ups and reaches $19,000. Well, I promise you, all of those people who thought we were idiots and who had no interest in buying Bitcoin at $300-$400 a piece were now very, very interested in buying it at $19,000 a piece. The phones were ringing off the hook. So I think that, this is the effect of cumulative market psychology, which is what's now probably happening to gold, and which is, all of these things are why I am a trend follower and why I have been a trend follower since I shed my university education and learned how the markets actually work. It's large-scale price events are far and away the most powerful driver of investment performance. And these large-scale price events always happen as trends.
Alex, what a wonderful conversation. We'll have to I have so many follow-up questions, but in the interest of time, we need to wrap it up, sadly. 'Cause just on gold, I could have asked you, is gold overhyped, overbought? Are we at that stage yet? Because we've seen that so many follow-up questions. But Alex, maybe we could find some time for a part 2, because I'd love to discuss with you also everything from a European perspective and what we're doing right now. And there's so many touching points. I could have asked you many, many, many more questions. But in the meantime, where can we send our audience? Where can we follow your work, Alex?
Oh, they can find me on X. I'm quite active on X. My handle is @NakedHedgy. And I have 2 Substack publications. One of them is for investors and traders. It's called iSystem Trend Following. And then I have a personal Substack where I write on subjects of more general interest, which is called Alex Krainer's Substack. So that's 3 platforms where I'm most active, even though I have a blog, I have a website, I have a YouTube channel, but
You're busy. You're a busy man, but the information you're sharing is very, very valuable. So I really appreciate your time, Alex. Thank you so much for coming on. As I said, we'll have to do this again. See if we can find a time soon. But thank you so much. Really appreciative. And everybody else, thank you so much for tuning in. So
with pleasure, guys. Thank you for having me, and greetings to your viewers.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Alex, and everybody else. Thank you so much for tuning in. Tremendously appreciate your support of the channel. Hope this was educational and informational. And if it was, please leave a comment, leave a like, and of course, subscribe to the channel. It helps us bring great guests like Alex onto the program. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back with lots more. Thank you.